Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. This is episode 10 now. My name is Todd Nesloni. I'm an elementary school principal in Navasota, Texas, and author and co-author of some books like Kids Deserve It, Stories from Web, and Sparks in the Dark. This chat, though, is based after my second book, Stories from Web. And the whole point of this chat today is to allow people who I have heard inspiring stories from to just kind of share their story and hopefully give you some insight into who they are and maybe learn from them as well. I'm super pumped today to have my guest with me, Jonathan Howell. Jonathan, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you, Todd. It's good to be here.
So, Jonathan, for those people who may not know who you are, give me a little bit of background of you and kind of what you do every day.
Yeah. So I am a principal at an intermediate school, Fossil Ridge Intermediate School, which is 6th and 7th grade students. We have an enrollment of about 945 teachers and probably a total of 75 staff members. We are in St. George, Utah, which to help people out, maybe the best thing to do is just say we're an hour and a half north of Vegas. Or if people know Zion National Park, we're 45 minutes away from Zion National Park. I have been in education for 25 years.
Wow.
This is my 4th year as a principal here at Fossil Ridge.
Were you principal somewhere else before?
I was an assistant before at a high school. In fact, prior to coming here, I had never been anywhere but a high school. So it was quite the transition going from 17 and 18-year-olds to 11 and 12-year-olds, but it's been great. This school is unbelievable.
I can imagine. We always, us educators, when you're either an elementary or a secondary person, like you just view the opposite side as like, I can't do that. So kudos to you for being a high school and middle school guy. I love those kids, but I could not be principal at a campus with that many hormones and the kind of things that are said and done. I'll stay with my little ones all day long, so.
We still have the kids picking their boogers. We still got that going on.
I believe it. I always say, when people try to act like the secondary students are so much different than elementary, I always say, you know what? I've worked with high school seniors before, and they work just as hard for a sticker as a kindergartner will.
Absolutely.
So they're just little kids in bigger bodies, and they like to say a lot more bad words than my little kids do. So.
Absolutely.
So, John, it's so interesting to me how I find some of these stories from people that I have as guests on here. And I was on Twitter, and you had tagged me actually in the tweet, and you had posted this YouTube video that you had made, just kind of sharing a little bit of piece of your story and things that you were dealing with that you thought would inspire and encourage others. And I watched it and I was blown away with your vulnerability, your transparency, the bravery that it took not only to share your story, but also, when you're the leader of a campus, sharing personal sides of yourself is even harder sometimes to do. So for any viewers or listeners who may not know kind of what I'm talking about, kind of lead me into what I'm talking about and where that came from.
Okay. So I had been thinking I've suffered from depression for 20 years. And last fall in October, I hit a breaking point, Todd, and didn't want to be around anymore.
Right.
And so I went to the University of Utah, to their Neuroscience Institute, and spent 5 weeks up there getting what's called ECT, which is basically, if people have seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, that's their first, the first thing that comes to their mind is Jack Nicholson with, those big old things on the side of his head. But essentially what ECT is the doctors are trying to use electricity to create a grand mal seizure. And it's basically kind of a reset button for the brain. To reset it in hopes that maybe things can get a little bit better. So I was there for 5 weeks and did a series of 16 of those in 5 weeks.
Wow.
And then came back to school in December. And from December until just last week, monthly, I'll go up to the University of Utah and either have 1 or 2 of those treatments, kind of as a little extra reboot.
Mhm.
I don't need the series anymore, but I still go up there to get a treatment once a month. Um, as
So,
far as
back me up a little bit with when did you first realize that there might be something going on, that you might be struggling from depression? When did that first hit you?
it first started out and felt like anxiety,
Mhm.
really, really bad anxiety. And then from there, it just grew into these dark thoughts, that I'm no good, that I can't do this, that I'm fat, that I'm ugly, that I'm stupid. And they just fed off of each other. And they still do, Todd. I'm not gonna lie to anybody.
Right.
Um, and about probably 15 years ago, I realized, I'm in a tough spot, and that's when I first started to get onto medications and things like that. I would say probably the past 5 years have been the worst as
Mhm.
far as number of what my wife calls dark days
Right.
um, for me. And like I said, last fall is when it really started to crumble down. And so with the ECT treatments and medication and a better diet and exercise, and I even got a dog in January, a big old Bernedoodle. Uh, I've
What's the dog's name?
Rizzo.
Rizzo.
Rizzo. I've had a really good couple of weeks, and I feel like from about February on, I've had more good days than bad days, Todd.
So
Um,
when you first realized that it was depression and you were going to be taking medication, was it something that was difficult for you to accept, or was it kind of like a relief of now I have a name with what I'm feeling?
no relief. It was really difficult to accept because I didn't know anything about it, and therefore I fell into the trap of the stigma associated with mental illness. And it was at that point that I promised myself I would never tell anybody, that I would give people no red flags, no clue, no idea that I was struggling with this because of the shame and the guilt um, that's associated with that stigma. And so I did that, Todd, and did that really well. In fact, if we were to go back in the last 20 years here in this district, and brought students and teachers and administrators in, they would tell you that they had no indication that
Mhm.
I was struggling this badly because I had to hide it.
Right.
Well, hiding it came at a cost. Hiding it became exhausting. And by the time I left school, because I had hidden all day my emotions and the way I felt, and I put on this tough face and this, you know, really energetic and enthusiastic and passionate person, which I am. That's me.
Yeah.
But by the time I got home, I was done, and I would go to bed, and I would have nothing left for my family, for my wife. And so as I was getting better over the last few months, I started thinking about, maybe it's time to share. And last Wednesday, I sat in front of the computer like I'm doing right now and just talked to people. When I sent it out, I was shaking, Todd.
I was gonna ask, it's one thing to be in your head and thinking, okay, I can get in there, I can share, I can do all this stuff, and then you're recording it and you're like, okay, I can do this because it's just me talking to the screen. But then, when you get to that point of I'm gonna hit send and people are gonna see this and people are going to hear it straight from my mouth. I mean, I would imagine there would be fear involved in that. What do you think was your biggest fear in putting that out there?
My biggest fear is, and still is today, was and is, that the stigma exists, Todd. The stigma is so real, and I knew it was real. And when you come out and you bare your soul essentially to everyone, to
Yeah.
my teachers and district administrators and parents and the board, you don't have a guarantee that they're not going to look at you differently and perceive
Right.
you different, and maybe maybe look at you as maybe not being competent, anymore. But I told myself that's a small number of people.
Right.
And I needed to do this for myself. I needed to get that weight off my shoulders. My teachers needed to know why I was gone for 5 weeks last year. And I know that my words can reach people.
Right.
And so ultimately, I wanted to share and educate and help in the midst of trying to get this big monkey off my back. And the response has been unbelievable.
I was going to say, I've seen some of the comments because you tagged me in one of the tweets. And so when people reply and they leave all of us on there, I was seeing some of the comments and stuff. But kind of tell me a little bit about, what have you seen as some of the positive and or negative repercussions from sharing that piece of yourself?
I'll start with the negative because there aren't as many. One comment that was made, and excuse me for saying this, was just get your ass out of bed. You're fine. Some other comments were, I don't think you should be the principal. I don't think you are stable enough to do your job. Cynics questioning my motives. People thinking that it was like my last will and testament, and I was in this downward spiral, which is exactly the opposite. I was feeling great. Those are the negative things.
And I think, some of those things you shared, I think, those would be stereotypical negative answers that I would think maybe would happen from doing that. And I think that really keeps a lot of people who struggle from different mental illnesses from sharing those and from getting the support they need and the help that they need. And I think, I hate that. And I hate when people will do that behind a computer screen as well. It's like, you know what, have a conversation with me, see that I'm a normal person. Let me talk you through this. Let me educate you on some things, because usually also those answers come from a very uneducated person on the topic.
Yeah.
Because if they truly knew what depression or addiction or any of those things were like, they wouldn't make that comment like, just get out of bed, because it's not that easy.
On the positive side, I've heard from students that I taught 20 years ago, Todd.
I love that.
I've heard from students just the past couple of years. I've heard from parents, both from Fossil Ridge and from the high school 20 years ago. I've heard from teachers that I taught with at Pineview High School. I've heard from almost every teacher in this building. I've heard from district administrators. I've heard from people I don't even know who just watched it and thanked me and said, thanks for being brave. And I don't know that there was much bravery to it, because as I was sitting there, I was trembling. I was terrified.
But that made the video so much more real, because I felt like it was so straight from your heart when you shared that. Yeah,
I basically opened up my soul, and I probably said some things that maybe didn't need to be said. When I explained a few things that was going on with treatment or with where I was last October. But I was just talking to the camera. I didn't have anything in front of me. I was just trying to speak, trying to tell my story. There you go. I was trying to tell my story. The other thing that's happened is I've learned that I have teachers in this building, Todd, that I didn't know were struggling with this same issue.
Wow.
I've talked to teachers that I taught with at Pineview High School who struggle with this issue. I've talked to other principals in our district, Todd, who are trying to do the same thing I did forever because of the stigma, who are struggling every day, but they're putting on that happy face because, of the stigma and the possible repercussions that could come from that. But I feel like
my guest on episode 9, Jo Fay, she shared about her son and him struggling with the addiction of cutting and her finding out about that. And she shared that, and then as soon after that episode, I watched your video, and I thought, when people share those dark moments, that they have found triumph over. Not that they're through them, not that they won't ever deal with them again, but they're sharing that I'm still here. And this is something I want you to see. I think that you never really know the lives that you're changing just by sharing your story, or the lives that you've saved just by sharing your story. Because I love that you brought up the comment of you found out there are other administrators or teachers that that struggle with the same thing. Because when we wrote Stories from Web, one of the stories in there is from a teacher on our campus who shares the story of losing several children through a miscarriage, and how difficult that was, and how she worked through it, and how everything dealing with that. And I still remember she came up to me the day after the book came out, and she said, "Todd, the neatest thing happened." She said, one of the teachers, or one of the other staff members on campus, she said, came up to me and just gave me a big hug. And she said, "I just want to tell you, thank you for writing that story." She goes, "Because it made me feel like I wasn't alone in what I dealt with." And, when you deal with these things that are they feel so personal, that you can so easily convince yourself that nobody else is dealing with this, so they're just going to look at you weird or make these judgment calls. You don't share. And then when you find out it's not just me, somebody else is dealing with this and is trying to work it out too. And they look on the outside like they have everything together. Like you said, you were showing up at school and people had no idea because you put a smile, a brave face on. You're the administrator. That's what we do. That's what Joe Fay talked about last week too, is that she was showing up. People had no idea what she was dealing with at home. But I really believe that when you are vulnerable and you share that piece, you do save lives, because it reminds people they're not alone.
Absolutely. And that was part of I think depression is a very lonely illness. It's a very solitary illness. Everything you just said is so true, because it tries to trick you into thinking that you are the only one with the illness, and that you are, and then comes the guilt and the shame. And then you don't want anybody to know.
Right.
It's when I pushed send last week, as hard as it was in that moment liberating. Mm-hmm. Nobody had even seen it yet, but my family. But it just felt like I can take a little bit of a breath, And I feel like it's given me another tool in the toolbox as a principal. I feel like because I shared this story, I can be a better principal, because now that it's out there, Todd, now I can help kids that are going through the exact same kinds of things. Now I can help parents who have kids going through these struggles, and I can talk to them as a real person and share my own experiences. We encourage kids to talk. If you're having a hard time, come in and talk. Let us know how we can help you. We, and by we, I mean people that suffer from mental illness, need to talk. Mm-hmm. And it's as simple as having a conversation like this, or it's as simple as just getting your story out there. Mm-hmm. Because in that comes that liberating feeling. And in that comes that feeling that I'm not the only one. Mm-hmm. I had no idea about this person and that person and this person. And it is something that multiple people deal with. And mm-hmm. I'm not alone. And I can lean on others. And I can allow others to lean on me. It's been amazing. It's been...
Well, and you bring up a good point that, as educators and as administrators, we want our kids to talk to us about these things. But I think that, I think for me, if everybody around me looks perfect and never shares any of the struggles, it makes me not want to share, because I'm like, I don't want to be the only one acting a fool, or like I didn't got it together, when I know we all don't have it together, but you all make it look real easy. Uh-huh. So I'm not going to share anything. And I think our kids are like that too. I think many times sometimes they want to say, I'm not going to go and talk to anybody because they are perfect. They never mess up, and they're not going to get it. They're not going to understand me or where I'm coming from. And I know I've said it in the show already, but I think that's what's so powerful when you do share your truth and tell your story, is that you let people see that what may be on the outside is not always exactly what's happening within. But as well, like we've mentioned before, there's so many stigmas attached to different types of mental illnesses. And when the only way you've educated yourself is by watching a movie, then you're not truly educated. And even with depression, there's so many levels and so many different ways that people struggle and deal with depression. I think that's why it's powerful too that you shared very personally the treatment that has been making a difference for you. Because I think most people, when they think of depression, they're like, well, take a pill and it'll make you happy.
Mm-hmm.
And you were on medication like that for a while, right?
Right. I've been on
Were you
medication.
not seeing a difference at all, or a little bit, or what led you to the electric therapy?
And so from time to time, they would change the medication up a little bit, change the dosage, or change whatever the drug was that that they were using. But everything just kind of slowly fell apart. And what's one of the things that I hate so much about this disease is that some of your darkest days come on days when you have no reason to have a dark day or a bad day. It's just
out of the random moment too.
Yeah. Just this, and you're trying to tell yourself in the midst of this, there's no reason for me to be feeling this way right now. This summer we went to Yosemite as a family. All our kids are older. I'm old, man. And
old is relative.
One day, I said, let's go into San Francisco. It's like 3 hours away. Let's go into San Francisco and go to the wharf and do some fun things. And the Giants were in town, and I'm a big baseball fan. And so we went, and I had the most miserable time, Todd.
Wow.
I didn't want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I was there with the people I loved. I was at a baseball game in a beautiful ballpark. I had every reason to soak it in and enjoy it, but I had a hoodie on the whole game, the whole day. And I look at pictures from that day, and it makes me sad because I can see the depression in my face. Mm-hmm. And it's times like that where you just want to throw your hands up in the air and say, why now?
How do you how do you release those moments and accept that it's part of the illness and not part of who you really are?
I don't know if I have fully done that.
Right.
I really don't. I think this may be a step towards realizing that in greater, a whole lot better than I do now. I don't think I'm there. Mm-hmm. I still, I don't, and I think I said this in the video, it can't define me. It can't. But there's still a part of all of this that in my head, it is me. And that depression is telling me it does define you. This is who you are. You're not the passionate, energetic guy. You should be this because you're terrible.
It's like that second voice that's in there.
Yep.
So, somebody in the comments that's watching now said, they said, they say that many people with depression also feel like they are constantly letting people down. Is that something that you feel or struggle with as well?
I think it's the disease more than my personality, but I have a hard time finding positive things that I do. I have a hard time taking, I have a hard time when people come up to me and they thank me for things or they tell me I did a good job. I'll just kind of brush it off and be like, yeah, that was somebody else. Yeah. Because you're no good, Todd. So you can't possibly be getting a compliment because you can't do that. You doubt yourself beforehand to a certain extent. Sometimes your confidence isn't completely there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes you do something and you look back and you're like, that was horrible, when it probably was great. You know, perfect statement, great question, absolutely. You look at yourself in a negative light, and because of that, you don't allow others to shine their lights on you, because it feels like it's not real, like it's not sincere.
Yeah.
When it is.
Is this something that has been a struggle for you your entire life, or can you kind of pinpoint when you really began to feel it and feel different, or is this like you always remember struggling with this?
I think I would go back to junior high school. So it would have been 8th or 9th grade. And I'm not big, okay? But I had this body dysmorphia, which was so weird because I was a skinny, healthy, happy kid who looked at himself in the mirror every single day. I would go in there, and here we go, I'm bearing my soul again. I would go in there and I would do this. And then I would turn around and do this and look in the mirror, because in my mind I had all these double chins.
Right.
I would take my shirt off, and have jeans on or shorts or whatever it was, and do the same thing and look at myself in the mirror and tell myself how fat and ugly I was. That's where it all started, with who knows where that came from. But it came, and I still struggle with that, Todd. I still stand in front of the mirror and look at myself and think, dude, you're awful. You're nasty.
So walk me through a little bit about, bringing your family into this conversation when you find out that it's depression, that's what you're struggling with, and you're going to start seeking that help. Obviously, you're going to want to bring your wife or your children, whoever, into the conversation and let them see. Was that a terrifying thing for you as well? And kind of talk me through what it was like when, as just you and your wife, or you as a family, however it worked, when y'all had those conversations.
There were 5 of us, and it had come time that it was going to be obvious that something was very wrong. Dad was sick, and it wasn't just about pills. He was going to need to go see a therapist and a counselor. And so we sat the kids down, and even though it was a safe place, it was excruciating.
Oh, yeah.
To see the look on my kids' faces, because dads are heroes.
Mm-hmm.
Dads can do nothing wrong. And here's my dad telling me that he has a mental illness. Mm-hmm. Here's my dad telling me about all these dark thoughts that he has. And it broke my heart to have that conversation, which had to take place, but it was heartbreaking. My kids have been so supportive, Todd. For Father's Day, my middle son, who's 22, he wrote me a 3-page letter of his 3 best memories with his dad.
Oh, wow.
He said, I could buy you stuff, but based off the year you've had, I want you to know that these are our 3 best memories, and I want you to put this in your top drawer at school so you can look at it when you're having a tough day.
You're making me emotional.
It just, and my wife, someone the other day asked me about my wife. They said, how did your wife feel about this? Mm-hmm. And what's your wife going through now? And I said, this is nothing for her. Her issues, her challenges are on an everyday basis with me. Mm-hmm. She is an absolute freaking rock star. And she's an educator as well. And so she understands why you would try to hide it,
Mhm.
but I can't imagine going through this without her and her support. The fact that I sent a video out there, okay, great, she was proud of me for being brave, but it's every day for her because she's riding this crazy train right alongside me.
So did you feel that proverbial weight lifted off of you when you finally spoke it out loud to people you loved, your family, when you first said it to them?
Yeah. In fact, I actually I had made the decision to do this, and I had created the video, and I actually sent it to all my kids, my family, my parents, and said, I want you to watch this before I send it out. I don't want you to see it on social media before you've seen it from me. And they obviously knew everything
Mm-hmm.
that was being said. So that part of it was almost like I was sending out, hey, look at this, make sure it's okay. So before I send it to the rest of the world and embarrass myself. Um, the point that was probably, there were 2 points where I felt that weight lifted off. The first time was after I finished talking,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't know how long I was going to talk. I didn't know what I was going to say. And it kind of finishes abruptly if you look at it. But once I was done with that, and I talked about it a few minutes ago, it was like
Mm-hmm.
a big deep breath that I could take. And then the next liberating piece, the next time I felt that monkey being lifted was when I pushed send and and told myself, you did it. You did it. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what other people say. It doesn't matter. You had the courage. You were vulnerable enough to do the hardest thing you've ever done in your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to be proud of yourself for being brave.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that weight lifted because now I don't have to work on hiding it so much.
Yeah.
Now I don't have to keep it from people.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So when you told your own children for the first time, what was their response?
oh my goodness. Well, as you can imagine, our kids were a little younger then,
Mm-hmm.
and we're all uneducated about it. And so they didn't understand, especially our youngest. We had to pretty much spell out for them what depression is
Right.
and what dad's going to do with a therapist and why dad takes this medication and why dad does this sometimes and why dad does this. And it was just like I said, they were just kind of sad.
Yeah.
It was almost like they didn't want to believe it. Not that I'm this great person, but in their eyes, I'm Superman.
Right.
And they don't want somebody telling them that somebody's found kryptonite,
Right.
and dad has this problem, and they didn't want it to change me, and they didn't want it to hurt me.
Right.
It was amazing because you have these 3 young boys, and it wasn't about them. They weren't asking questions about how this is going to affect me.
Mm-hmm.
It was about wanting to make sure dad's going to be okay.
Right.
And that dad's not going to get worse and that we're not going to lose dad. That's
And I love that. And you sharing this is such a testament to that when you speak your truth to those who love you and care about you, you create a support system around you that help you through it. And it's not always going to be perfect, and they're not always going to support you perfectly, but it's better than not sharing at all. And so talk to me about now. So you've known you've had this. You've started to seek some new treatments. Where do you see yourself moving forward now?
Well, basically, as far as the treatments are concerned, I go up to Salt Lake City once a month on a weekend, usually a Saturday, and have an ECT treatment once a month. I will continue to go to counseling. I'm going to counseling once a week, and I'm continuing to take all these same medications. Like I said earlier, someone suggested getting a dog, and at first you're like, how's a dog going to help with my depression? It's amazing.
Yeah.
I love him to pieces. All our kids are older and gone, and it's been amazing. As far as being a principal and an educator, nothing has changed. I am the same principal that I was in May.
Because because you just shared it doesn't mean it just happened. So if people want to say you can't do your job now, it's like, dude, I've been having depression for years. I've been doing my job. So you just know about it now.
Absolutely. That's all that's changed. And if someone wants to suddenly tell me that I'm no longer capable, they just are completely uneducated. I just said it, but I'll say it again. The only thing that has changed for Jonathan Howell as a principal, the only thing that has changed for our students and our teachers and our parents and our community is the fact that they know my story. I am the exact same person with the exact same beliefs, with the exact same skills that I had in May, that I had in February, that I even had in October when I was going through hell.
Yep.
Nothing has changed. And so I'll just continue to carry on and do right by our kids and our teachers.
I love it. So do you ever find yourself in a quiet moment or waking up in the middle of the night going, oh my gosh, why did I share that video? or what's going to happen now?
Yeah. In fact, the last couple of days, I've second guessed myself a lot just because of some of the responses. And that's what's sad is sometimes and it happens in schools with kids that are having issues with behavior. Sometimes we hone in on and we focus on those negative behaviors that don't make up even 1% of your student population or 1% of your teachers or 1% of the community. But it's like, oh, all of a sudden I hear this about myself and I hear that about myself. And then I just sit there and think, this is exactly why people don't talk about it. This is exactly why I carried it around and hid it for so long, because of this stigma. And it doesn't even make me mad. I'm not mad at people.
Right.
It just shows me that the stigma still exists and people just need to be educated. And so again, there's another chance for me as I talk to people to help educate people. I read a quote today from a professor at Vanderbilt University. In fact, I might even still have it right here. Yes, I do.
There we go.
So Stephen Holland, PhD, professor of psychology at Vanderbilt University, he says this: it's a myth that depressed people aren't effective at work. If you look at some of the greatest leaders in world history, you might think depression ought to be a prerequisite. When we think of Lincoln and Churchill, we've done okay with people who've dealt with mental illness.
That's powerful.
I mean, wow. Because I wasn't having a great day today. And I was second guessing myself. And I saw this. My assistant principal actually brought it to me and said, you need to see this. And it's simple. It's simple, but it helps.
Yeah.
Every little thing helps.
I love it. So as we wrap up this episode, let's say somebody listening or watching today is struggling with depression themselves and they haven't yet reached that stage of asking for help or letting people in their life know that they are struggling. What would your advice be to those people, of some of the first steps they can take?
That's a great question. Every one of us is at a different stage of depression. And so my advice would be to know who you are, to really know who you are, to be able to discern who you are and what depression is, who you are and what depression turns you into. And I would say once you are able to kind of separate the two and feel okay in your own skin, you're never going to feel good about sharing it, because now it's out there and you no longer control the narrative. So I think the time and the place depends on a person's stage.
Right.
Depends on where a person is at. But I would say that eventually you have to do it. Eventually, just because you can't do everything. I just felt like I couldn't continue to hide it.
Right.
And talking about it tonight, talking about it over the video, talking about it over the phone with other educators, talking about it with people from the community has been as healthy, Todd, as anything I've done over the past 20 years.
Right.
But when we're in the midst of the depths of depression, we think the exact opposite. We don't want to talk.
Right.
Even if it's just finding that one person who you trust, that one colleague or family member or neighbor that you trust completely, and talking to them and getting them out there, getting it out there, and having a discussion and letting them know of your struggles. Because once people know, 99% of them are going to want to help.
Yep.
99% of them are going to be supportive. And that's what we need, because it's such a solitary, lonely illness.
Yeah.
We need to know that we have that army around us, that army of support, and also that army of people who understand, who go through the exact same things every day. And so I would encourage people to talk. And it's hard.
Yeah.
It is hard. And I'm not messing around when I say I was trembling and I was terrified, because
I could feel it in the video. I mean, I could feel I'm getting this off my chest, but I'm still kind of nervous. But thinking about the other side of the question too. Let's say we have somebody listening or watching today who they're not struggling with depression, but they really feel like somebody in their life is. Is it okay to bring that conversation up, or how do people deal with that?
That is an awesome question. Let me give you what would happen in my case.
Right, because every case is different. We know that.
Prior to last week, I would have said, I'm good. I'm all right. I'm fine. Nothing's wrong. I wouldn't have said a word. Some people out there may look at that, and it's not that I was upset at them. I was so appreciative. I understood what they were doing.
Right.
You know, they're not coming in here saying those things in a negative way or to make me feel worse. They are legitimately coming in to offer support, but I couldn't go there. And so I would lie. I'm good. I'm all right. Now, to some people, they may look at that and look at it as an opportunity to talk to somebody. Because if it's not that you can't trust them, they're coming to you.
Right.
No, you're not going to them saying, hey, please help me, please help me. They've noticed something and they're coming to you. It's someone you can trust. And if you want to open up, it could be extremely healthy for you to do.
So people who may think somebody's struggling, you don't want them not to ask how you're doing. You don't want them to be afraid of that question.
No, No, because you still want to think that people might care about you,
Right.
you know. And so, hey, if you want to ask me how I'm doing, thank you very much, but I'm okay.
Yeah.
I appreciated it, and I knew it was coming from such a good spot. I knew it was coming from love, but I just couldn't. I just couldn't go there.
Right.
Just couldn't.
Well, Jon, I want to thank you for being brave enough to not only put your story out there before tonight, but then also agreeing to come on to a live broadcast to just talk about what your journey through depression has been like, and the support from your family and different members of the staff or community or things like that, and that knowing that and just being brave enough to share that you're still on a journey. You have not reached the finale of your journey where everything is perfect and roses and rainbows or whatever. But letting people say that, just being brave enough to say, you know what, I'm a principal, I lead people, and I struggle with something, and I'm not perfect, and I'm not ever saying I was perfect, but here's me speaking my truth. And I truly believe that by being here today and being able to share your story in that way, I can say without a doubt that you're saving lives, and that's a powerful yet terrifying. I understand that moment. So thank you, Jon, for just being brave enough to do that.
Absolutely, Todd, and thank you for having me. Uh, we just fight on. We just fight
That's
on.
right.
Our story is not over.
That's right.
Appreciate it. Thank
And
you.
I want to thank everybody today for listening or watching episode 10 of Tell Your Story. As you go out this week or this evening or this day, however you're listening to this, I challenge you to be brave enough to share pieces of yourself with those around you and with the world at large through social media. Because together we are better, but until you share all of the real pieces of who you are, we're never truly telling our story. Everybody have a great night.